When you think of movie-making theme parks in Florida, it is impossible to not think of Walt Disney World or perhaps Universal Studios. Years before either of those opened their doors, there was another. Ahead of its time, Dania was a place of pirates, rock and roll, and some of the worst movies ever made. I can't emphasize the worst part enough. I mean, pure nightmares. Pirates World's history is way weirder than you would imagine. C.T. Robertson worked in the oil and real estate business in Wichita Falls, Texas, before moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in 1963, where he purchased an insurance company in Orlando. He had another dream, combining an amusement park and movie studio. To make his new idea a reality, Robertson would buy land on Sheridan Street in Dania. The location was chosen due to the proximity to the Robertsons' home and the fact that it wasn't too far from the major cities of Fort Lauderdale and Miami, the tourist hotspots in the state. The first part of his dream would be to create his amusement park. Robertson would hire somebody with Hollywood experience to design it. Originally, the amusement park for Dania was to be designed by Paul Grossi. Due to concerns with the attraction's budget, he instead decided to stay in Hollywood at MGM and work on a movie. Luckily, the perfect person was already lined up in place as the park's general manager who could replace him. Bob Minnick began working with his aunt and uncle on the Circle D Ranch at Disneyland. Disneyland and Walt influenced Bob to become a designer of parks himself, and over the years he began working at Six Flags, where he would be introduced to Randall Duhl. Together they would work on designs for the New York World's Fair Texas Pavilion, conceptual designs for Over Georgia, as well as helping Duhl design parts of the Universal Studios tour, Cedar Point and Busch Gardens, California. After gaining all this experience, for the first time he would take the lead role in designing Florida's newest exciting tourist attraction, Pirate World. In 1966, the major new amusement park coming to Florida was announced. Pirates would be returning to the Gold Coast of Florida in the spring of 1967. Planned to cover 30 acres, and with a 35-acre parking lot, it was estimated to cost $4 million and had lofty hopes to attract 1 million people per year. Pirates World would be planned to be one of the largest themed amusement centers in the United States, with 5 distinct areas representing locales which once harbored notorious pirates. The 5 areas would be the Spanish Main, featuring Caribbean ports, where Jean Lafitte held sway, the China Seas, Jamaica's Port Royal, and Africa's Barbary Coast. Bob Minnick and his team said they spent hours researching pirate lore and history to make an authentic recreation of famous ports, buildings, and ships. These would just be the original plans. Along with the amusement park, which took up 30 acres of the 100 purchased, they hope to eventually build that movie studio next door, a large stadium to host the Pittsburgh Pirate baseball team during spring training, a luxury motel, and golf course. Bringing a sports team to Dania became one of the priorities for the project. Money for the project came from multiple private investors, who came from all over the US, including Ryder Neff, one of the owners of Cedar Point, and another being Daytonian John Kemper, who had said multiple times he hoped to become the Walt Disney of Florida. One of the first things the park wanted to do was get a ship for the attraction, and in 1966 they attempted to move a movie U-ship seen in films such as White Cargo to the upcoming park. Instead, it was accidentally sunk when trying to be transported and sent to the dump. The whole situation was one of the first lawsuits of many that the park would be involved in over the years. Bob Minnick, inspired by Disneyland, insisted that his new park would be fun for all ages, themed, and most importantly, clean. He said it would not have the honky-tonk atmosphere that doomed so many amusement parks after World War II. The amusement park would be back with a bang and offer 550 jobs to locals. They put a focus on hiring clean-cut college kids to run the place, with an emphasis on courtesy and politeness. The local city of Dania backed the project right away, expecting to collect $15,000 in taxes from the attraction in the first year. They had created a deal that meant every visitor would pay 5 cents per person towards the city. The support of the city would start out wow, but that wouldn't last very long. As construction began, as soon as word got out that the tourist attraction was coming, Pirates World's first troubles began when Hollywood Inc., who owned hundreds of residential lots in the area, sued the attraction for improper zoning. They stated they feared their value would be affected by carnival-style attractions. They said that they would do anything possible to stop it being built. It didn't really matter, and the city had already made the deal, so nothing came from it. By January 1967, as opening approached, the call was sent out that Pirates World wanted college students. They could come to work as clean-cut, family-friendly pirates at the new wholesome park. Costing $7 million to build, much more than originally planned, Pirates World was set to open on April 7, 1967. Many said that Florida would now have its own version of Disneyland to bring tourists to. Pirates World would be the 4th largest amusement park in the country when complete. Unlike Disneyland's pay-per-ride, Pirates World would have a one-price entry of $3.50 per adult and $2.50 for children, and everything inside would be included to ride, enjoy, or see the shows. The only things that weren't included were food and souvenirs, though visitors were welcome to bring their own, and tip-in would not be allowed. Just a few days before opening, Pirates World was said to be delayed indefinitely by the city's utility commission. All rides would have to be re-inspected due to an issue over the sewer line connection for the park, and it was said to have been laid without a permit. Again, these issues were fixed quickly, and the opening went ahead as planned on time on April 7, 1967. Those who previewed the new amusement park left impressed. This was more of an A+ grade park than a high C's park. They were all hooked. It was a place full of treasure that made people visiting feel more like a pirate than leaving irate. Doesn't really rhyme, but irate, pirate, yeah, it works. Most of the rides found at the park will be purchased from other locations. The most popular and recognizable attractions will be the 23-story high Crow's Nest Tower, which had been popular at the New York World's Fair. Other attractions purchased from the New York World's Fair included the Banyan Tree Slide, the Log Flume, and more. The Swiss Skyway took passengers over the park, and the original Coney Island steeplechase would be relocated to Pirates World. In addition to the rides, there would be a family theatre, marching bands, and street demonstrations by bands of pirates, along with a petting zoo and a carousel which had been relocated from Cleveland. The park featured another roller coaster, Wild Beetle Race, a wild mouse. The reviews often stated that it was 100% worth the adult admission cost, with all attractions included, something that not even Disneyland was yet doing, and it was seen as an incredible gimmick. It was popular right away, and the city earned $1,500 from the 5-cent head tax within the first days of opening. The park was happy, and the city was happy, and in the first month of operation, only on weekends, 20,000 people had visited. The zoning issues were mostly all fixed, and the future looked bright for Florida's new theme park. Even the mostly all-student employees loved working at the park, earning $1.50 per hour, calling it a place where you were a family, not just employees, on a first-name basis. Bob Minnick's Disneyland influence could be seen throughout. Broward was becoming the tourist capital of the state, with Ocean World, Pioneer City, and now Pirates World. The opening year of Pirates World was a huge success. Other than a few car break-ins, it became the place to visit and even work. It was often called Florida's most beautiful new attraction. By the end of its first year, Pirates World had had its first issues with the city. After a successful first month and excitement over the head tax, it had not been paid for 3 months and was overdue. The park agreed to reluctantly pay them and have its books audited. For the park's second year in 1968, Pirate World added Pirate Adventure Land, a highly themed village with swinging bridges, things to climb, and a boat ride down the river passing a fire-eating dragon. In this new $300,000 edition, Bob was putting his Disneyland knowledge to use once again, though it would be Bob's time soon to move on and leave the park, creating his own design and architectural firm that will go on to create hundreds of themed entertainment projects around the world. Before we keep going, I have a question for you. Do you know the Ice Cream Bunny? Well, get ready to have some nightmares. In June 1968, the second part of the plan for Pirates World would commence. Recreation Corporation of America, the owners of Pirate World, would break ground on a $1 million motion picture studio called Film World that not only would make movies, but be open for the public to tour as a second phase of turning Pirates World into Florida's largest tourist attraction. The Skyride would even be extended to get to the filming set. Created in conjunction with Empire Studios and designed by its studio founder Luke Moberly, the new studio was set to produce 5 films a year. Empire Studios was founded by Luke with plans to turn the Sunshine State into a second movie-making paradise like Hollywood. Film studios were flocking to the state for its beautiful beaches and weather, and movies like Flipper were more popular than ever. Moberly had formed his studio in Davie after working on sets for other studios, building his first in 1966. He had opened it to the public, giving tours, added a restaurant, and allowed tourists to see the movie-making business for the first time in Florida. And they were planned to do the same with a brand new hexagon stage built at Pirates World. With 5 films set to be made at the new studio, quality cinema this was not. The low-budget films would not only hopefully make a profit, but allow those visiting the park to get an insight into the world of movie making. Film World's first feature film at Pirates World will be titled The Grove and star Rita Hayworth, later being renamed to the Naked Zoo, and filmed in locations around South Florida before the sound stages were fully completed. Also, during 1969, the park began to host outdoor concerts, advertising clean air, easy parking, and a night of dancing. The park continued to expand its amusement park offerings and even announced a merger with Crystal Beach Amusement Park Company, located in Canada, just over the border from Buffalo. The future and expanding was at the forefront of Recreation Corporation's plans, and while the Crystal Beach deal did fall through, they had plans to even build their own park in Buffalo eventually. The clean-cut family amusement park was changing, and rock concerts were growing at the amusement park. What started as a competition for local bands had expanded to nationwide acts, and the locals and the city were not happy about it. Jefferson Airplane members were even arrested for being abusive and disorderly when the sound system was cut off during their show due to complaints of it being too loud from local residents. Arrests and drug use was becoming more and more common. Film World's official opening was set for the summer of 1969, both leasing its facilities for film creation and creating their own feature productions. With the most high-tech filming studio in Florida ready to go, they had plans to create multiple movies. The movies made at Pirates World were... well, let me just show you.
Oh, please. I didn't want to be a spinster by my own choosing.
What I need is a little girl. Oh boy, that's what I need, all right.
You are smaller than we are. You must be some kind of a bug. I will ask the advice of my friend. She says she is a human being, but I think she is lying. She is some kind of a bug.
Recreation Corporation had an aim with its home-created movies that they would be suitable for the entire family, but insisted that they would only aim to make movies for children's aged 2 to 12. To create these movies, they would bring in Barry Mahon, producer writer, director, known for movies such as Rocket Attack USA, Sex Killer, and The Wonderful Land of Oz. Though, dig a little deeper, and you'll see that he mostly made softcore 60s pornography films. And in fact spent much of the 60s doing that. Why was he hired to make children's movies at a pirate theme park movie studio in Florida? Once you see the movies that came from it, maybe this makes a little more sense. Well, actually no. It's still just weird. But he had actually produced a ton of children's TV shows. What makes the story even stranger, however, is that Barry was a pilot in the war and taken prisoner. It was him who the movie The Great Escape was loosely based on, with him being played by Steve McQueen. Barry Mahon worked on the film and was previously the personal pilot and manager of Errol Flynn. Perhaps that is where he got inspired to work at a pirate world. Unlikely.
Tell me about Musical Mutiny.
Why, honey, Musical Mutiny is the greatest groove in musical history. A flick where everybody does their thing.
The in-house movie first filmed at the new studio would be Mutiny at Pirates World, using the park as the locale. The film's plot is a reincarnated pirate posed as an employee at the park would let everyone in free for a rock concert at Pirates World. Mahon said that everything he made at the park would be family friendly, and he would ignore requests to insert sex or drugs into these children's movies.
Yes? What do you want? Don't you know this is a private office?
Yes, I do, Mr. Bertram.
If you only watch one movie this year though, it has to be Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny.
All places for Santa to be in his sleigh, stuck in the sand, thousands of miles from the North Pole, way down in Florida.
The bizarre film about Santa being stuck on a beach, who mumbles and sings,
It's usual cheer, because Christmas Day will soon be here. Who will help me? Who will set me free?
Then cuts to one of Mahon's earlier films for an hour, which was also filmed at the new studio and was just as bizarre, before returning to the new film where the Ice Cream Bunny arrives to save Santa, eventually.
But I don't see a fire. I don't see any smoke. Whenever there's a siren, it means there's a fire. And yet I don't see any smoke. I hear sirens. Where is that coming from? Where's that sound coming from? Oh, see the thing.
What is an ice cream bunny? I don't think we will ever really know for sure. The Ice Cream Bunny live action bits surrounding Thumbelina were packaged together to market it as another new matinee film for kids. The children's films being made at the studio would not get major releases like Mutiny was planned to have. They would play only on weekends at hundreds of movie houses across the nation at children's matinees. Parents could drop off their kids and they would witness the horrors of the Ice Cream Bunny, and afterwards, I doubt anyone would even believe what they saw. By August 1969, Pirates World was breaking new attendance records. These records were growing bigger due to the popularity of the amusement park's rock concerts. More than 11,000 people would attend a Led Zeppelin concert at the park the following month. The complaints about the noise, drugs, and troubled rock music fans began to grow louder. The long-haired pot smokers coming to Dania were not what the locals wanted, as they put it. The park continued to expand and wanted more and more concerts and rides, and the previously open-air concerts would now have the world's largest tent built over it. Complaints did not stop, and many of the rock shows did not even really get started till 10:30 p.m. at night. New entertainment director Charles Ward aimed to bring even bigger rock artists to the park. These included the Grateful Dead, David Bowie, Alice Cooper, Fleetwood Mac, Black Sabbath, the Beach Boys, and many, many more. The concert tickets were an added extra after buying your park ticket, ranging from $2 to $6. That wasn't if you were just one of the kids who snuck into them though. The concerts were getting bigger, the park was still popular, and the terrible, terrible movies were still being produced. One of the more popular and successful movies they picked up was an animated film called Santa and the Three Bears by Tony Benedict. The studio still hadn't opened to tourists visiting the park, but movies were being made there, with 5 children's movies planned to be made per year. Mahon said that the children's classic fairy tales of old were badly written. Even the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen stories had to be remade because they said nothing good to the children of today. R&S Film Enterprises, a subsidiary of Recreation Corporation, would remake them with a moral message for today's children. Each film took around 90 days, and he said he didn't waste time with rehearsals, he just filmed them. He said he had gone from being called King of the Nudies to King of the Fairy Tales. While the park was successful, the real moneymaker and crowdbringer continued to be the rock concerts held under the now giant tent. Pirate World once again tried to get a sports team at its location when it tried to get a hockey franchise to come to Pirate World in an adapted rock concert theatre arena. The complaints about the concerts were at an all-time high, with the city now attempting to block them. The city tried to find anything wrong with inspections to close down the venue, and the fight between the pirates and the city would continue. During the 1971 season, over 600,000 people visited Pirate World. After the summer, the park closed to add a new roller coaster, the Wildcat. The movie studio continued with the purchase of CH51 WKID TV. They planned to launch a TV channel just with programming for children. This was opposed by some, as Pirates World was becoming known for its rock and roll and drug concerts, and shouldn't be promoting to children on TV. The challenge was dismissed, and WKID went on the air with its studio based at Pirate World in early 1972. After Walt Disney World opened in 1971, attendance at nearly all tourist attractions in Florida dropped, though in Dania, not by as much as predicted, and Pirates World attendance remained steady thanks to its concerts. Behind the scenes for a few years though, the finances for the park and the movie studio were struggling. To end the struggle between the city and Pirates World over its concerts, C.T. Robertson applied to change the park's zoning to allow them to build 1,700 dwelling units on the site. Robertson said that people had yowled about these concerts in Dania for years, and now they would have a chance to get rid of them. If the rezoning was approved, concerts would end within 90 days, as soon as contracts were fulfilled. If the rezoning wasn't approved, he would go ahead not only with the concerts next year, but add in a full season of wrestling and roller derbies. If you thought Pirates World was already a public nuisance, as many did, they hadn't seen anything yet. Pirates World owners said that if the rezoning was approved, Pirate World would be phased out over a couple of years and potentially relocated. Pirates World was the center of controversy for Dania ever since it opened, marked with civil disorder, parking problems, and those darned long-haired pot smokers that the city had attempted to close for years. As for the park's future, they were looking for sites in Broward and Dade counties, but it didn't matter as the rezoning request was mostly ignored and delayed, so the park remained open and concerts continued into 1973. That same year, the city, who had been trying to stop the concerts for years, finally found a way. On June 1st, 1973, the city finally managed to close down the Pirates World Concert Arena, as it was said to be substandard and had no certificate of occupancy. The roof, made of canvas and plastic, held up by steel ribs, was originally deemed not a building, which was why it did not have a certificate. Now it had been confirmed that it would class as a building, and the park needed a permit. While the park remained open until September 1973, now the city had successfully closed down its concerts, its financial difficulties were even higher. Suddenly, out of nowhere, and a surprise to its employees, Pirates World was closed permanently. The park normally closed in September and reopened in December. However, as the gates closed, the park management announced that it would never reopen. The land had still not been rezoned, and no reason was given. The owners had refinanced the park recently. That was the only real indication that they were struggling. Owner C.T. Robertson would not comment on the future of the park, but the animals were being sold, the pirate ship apparently sat at the bottom of the lake, and ride sale prices were being estimated. Then, out of nowhere, it was announced that the park would reopen for its 8th season on November 24, 1973. The plan to make it apartments seemed to have been scrapped, and its confusing future remained unknown. The TV studio on the site continued to operate, but the rest of the park had been the target of vandalism after sitting abandoned 2 months earlier. Robertson stated the concerts would not return, and the park would eventually go out of business, but for now, it was coming back. Without its concerts, Pirates World had very little chance of being able to continue. However, Pirates World did reopen on November 24th. Even though city officials said that the licenses had not been issued, it was later proven that they had acquired the right licenses, and the city had no claim to close the park. Just 2 weeks later, it was again reported that Pirates World had closed, this time for good, and was to be replaced by a 960-unit condominium community owned by Drexel Properties. Pirates World finally would close its doors forever on December 2nd, 1973. The amusement park, concert area, and attractions would sit abandoned. The only operating part of the attraction left would be the TV studio that was still in use. The props, attractions, and rides were put up for auction. What was left became the targets of vandals with fires, theft, and graffiti all over the defunct park. Something a pirate would be proud of. Finally, in November 1974, nearly a year after closing, the dilapidated buildings were planned to be condemned by the city and ordered to be removed by December 20th. The sale of the land was still pending, but the once 4th largest amusement attraction in the United States would be no more. The city had been unhappy with Pirates World for some time, and they were finally happy that it would be gone forever. Just like everything in the history of Pirates World though, the removal of the buildings required by the city would not be as simple as hoped. RCA had not replied to the city's request to remove Pirates World. Some of the buildings were still structurally sound and couldn't just be demolished without going to court. RCA continued to ignore the requests, and a hearing was scheduled for them to argue against the removal of the buildings. Recreation Corporation of America filed voluntary bankruptcy the same month, stating they could no longer maintain its 83 acres. Condemnation procedures finally began in late 1975, including the still-in-use television studio, which was said was using water unfit for human consumption after it started taking water from a well to not have to pay the city at all. After the buildings were condemned, Channel 51 went bankrupt shortly after being acquired by an investment group, putting an end to the film studios that once held so much promise on the site. In 1975, that old concert hall / tent went up in flames in a blaze accidentally started by workmen removing insulations from the roof. Again, the site's future would look bright. While the site continued to sit abandoned, some light shined on it in 1978. Pierre Bedard said he had been told by God himself to build a biblical park on the site of Pirates World. Paul stated that God told him exactly how to build the park nail by nail. The Bedards had told the city they had wanted to build a non-profit attraction on the site called God's World. a place that could give those who visited a different outlook on the future. While the plan had to still be approved by the City Commission, the area was still zoned for recreational use, and that was seen to be the preferred future for the site. The Bedard said they were trying to secure financing to pay for the first stage of construction and hoped to open God's World by June 1st, 1978. The planned $10 million development would include a Jonah's whale ride and other biblical attractions. Youngsters would even be able to get a preview of hell and walk right amongst the flames in another attraction. By July, delayed, it was reported that they wanted to open by September. When asked how close he was to securing the $3 million required to build the new attraction, he said he had raised about $6,000. But he had an offer that would be hard to refuse and said many major companies wanted to sponsor his new attraction. After RCA went bankrupt, the site was now owned by Fidelco Growth Investments of Philadelphia. Their response was that they wouldn't sell the site for promises alone, God's will or not. Pierre Bedard was insistent that he would transform the site and stated he had a real vision from God to build the park, and continued to hand out leaflets describing the plans for the site. These leaflets listed God as chairman of the board of God's World Inc. God's plan for Pirate World did not come to be. The area was replaced with a condo community, and the Pirates World Rebellion was finally over, demolished shortly after. It is often said that Pirates World closed due to Walt Disney World opening, but that wasn't really the case. The park was just too on theme with pirates causing trouble, and it was rock and roll that really killed Pirates World. It only existed for 7 years, but it had a huge impact on the area from incredibly popular concerts, its optimistic original plan and scope, and one of the first fully themed theme parks in Florida. C.T. Robertson had created a place full of promise, fun, and uniqueness, inspired by offering a better kind of amusement park, just like Disneyland, that really was ahead of its time in some ways. He passed away in 1997, yet some of his ideas would later go on to become staples in the Florida theme park industry. From offering a one-price ticket entry fee to being an amusement park combined with a movie studio, from holding concerts of some of the biggest artists of all time that sadly eventually led to its demise. Pirate World is often forgotten today, overshadowed by what would become the tourist hotspot building up around Walt Disney World. But for just a few short years in Dania, that was the hotspot of Florida for new tourist attractions. The park's history is full of hope, rebellion, rock and roll, and is way weirder than anyone could have imagined. Just like a pirate world should be. There is one thing though from Pirate World that can never be forgotten, because if you do, he might not help you when you are stuck.
Well, my old friend, the Ice Cream Bunny, I surely hope that you'll be able to help me out of my predicament. Well, and all the children will be so happy, and you will help, won't you? Of course. Of course. Rebel, you old hound, you were the one who helped, weren't you? Were you the one that brought the Ice Cream Bunny to help me out of my predicament?
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to join the expedition. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and now Threads, for updates on upcoming episodes, and a special thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel. We will see you next time.